first time with us, we are so happy you are here. My name is Erin Elizabeth Hartley Vanderlaan. I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend, a cousin, a niece, a granddaughter, a youth leader, a wife, sister-in-law, an aunt, a child of Wesley Park, and most importantly, a child of God. This is my story so far in trusting God. I'm a little nervous. In trusting God to fulfill the desires He placed in my heart, holding on and always trying for hope. Originally, my sermon was going to be all about me and my story, but through the last week and through much thought and prayer and a ton of the Holy Spirit moving directions last night, 11th hour right here, guys.
Amen.
And for those of you that know me, I tend to procrastinate, but I do my best work in that 11th hour. Taya laughs because she knows. So that direction changed to family. And God has created us as a family in humanity, biology, in this church, and by the people that we choose to be our family or our kindred. In the children's moment, we heard about how there are different types of families. In the scripture over the last couple of weeks, we've been learning about an amazing family that had been formed through Naomi and Ruth. Through their bonds of faith and their devotion, not just to one another, but to God. In my experience of trusting God with the desires of my heart, I've experienced so many of those Naomi and Ruth relationships, where you can count on them through the thick and the thin, the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs. On the stage here, there are two items that represent my trials and struggles with my faith, because these represent the things that God had placed in my heart long ago. Do you see that white dress? That beautiful white dress? That white dress came at the end of many tears and what I thought were unanswered prayers, panic attacks, doubt that God even cared, and learning to have patience, faith, and in the end, there would be an ultimate reward. Since 5th grade, I had an image of what my life was going to be like. That image was I was going to meet my high school sweetheart in my senior year. Then, after that, I was going to go to Grand Valley, get my teaching degree. We were going to get married this summer after I graduated. From there, I would get my master's in special education and be done having kids by the time I was 30. Guess what? That was my plan. I'm now 32, I work in banking, and I met my husband when I was 23 years old. So, a little bit different, right? But, so being done by the time I was 30, because, at 10 years old, 30 was so old. Guess what, guys? 30 is not so old. And I thought it would be easy. Easy because I followed what God had called me to do by serving others in ministry at church, by being an active youth group participant and now a youth leader, singing in the youth praise team and the sign choir as a teenager, then singing in the praise team as an adult, making a pledge to remain chaste until marriage at the age of 13. I didn't break laws, I didn't party, I didn't stay out past curfew. Outside of being a little argumentative with my parents at times, you guys know. I believe that I had followed what God called me to do. And that's why when my life wasn't turning out how I had planned it, I didn't understand why He was punishing me in my early 20s by giving me everything I wanted. I had struggled with seeing my friends and family of mine get married, have babies, and I did everything I was supposed to do. So why wasn't I getting everything I had planned? I can tell you why. Because it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right person, or the right place. In my college years, I had gone through a string of relationships that were not healthy, to say the least. The people I had dated were emotionally manipulative, and one was borderline verbally abusive. It took a mission trip to Cairo, Illinois, to make me realize that I needed to wait and be patient on God's timing. Do you remember those many Ruth and Naomi relationships that I was telling you about? This is one of them. The relationship that I have with my youth and my fellow youth leaders. They have helped me to be, hang on, I lost my place. See, you can tell I don't get paid to do this, so I'm sorry.
You're doing great.
So they have helped me. Are we good? Yeah. Apparently. Do we have, you want me to try it again? Okay. All right, so the relationship that I have with my youth and my fellow youth leaders, they have become an example of family, support, love, and kindness. And yes, those attributes are coming from my kids. Marriage, parenting, and most of all, of how to be a follower of God came from fellow adults. During one of the most confusing paths in my life, I was doubting if I was ever going to meet the person that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. They were there. They encouraged me to stay strong in who I was and not to let anyone else take advantage of me. And most of all, don't settle for anyone that God did not have planned for my life. That person that God had planned for my life came about 3 years after saying to myself during devotions on that mission trip, okay, God, I'm done trying to control things. It's on you. That person is the man that I married in that dress. For those of you that don't know, my husband Ross, I met through Tabby, and Tabby is one of the other youth leaders. And guess what? Ross is Tabby's cousin. Tabby had decided that she was going to play matchmaker. During this matchmaking scheme, I did not have any choice but to say okay and go along with her setup. I truly believe that there wasn't anything more than divine intervention when I met him, because the first night we met, he said 3 words to me. And for you guys that know me, I am very social and I want to talk. I want to get to know people. And that was a struggle. But Ross is the person that balances me. He balances out my crazy and keeps me calm. And I'm so thankful to that youth group family that brought me to my husband. During the journey of trying to find out where I fit, being single in the sea of married people here at Wesley Park, I was able to lean on different women that became my mentors through thick and thin. Good times and bad, ups and downs, in and outs. I was blessed and very fortunate to be given that direction in listening ears, kind words, big old bear hugs, and shoulders to cry on. Some of these women might not attend here anymore. They might have moved out of the state or found other church home. But many of them are still here, and I'm so thankful for them. And one of them is back there, like, sniffling, so you can't cry, because then I'm going to lose it. I believe that learning to trust God in that journey to find the right person led me to an even tougher journey I was about to face in creating a family. Do you remember that plan I was telling you about? I was supposed to be done having kids by the time I was 30. 32, and still hasn't happened, but that's okay. At the age of 15, I was diagnosed with a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Little did I know of how big of a deal that diagnosis was going to be down the road when I went to start a family. During the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, there were 2 very large cysts found on one of my ovaries that held 3 liters of fluid. This left me basically with half reproductive function. After further conversations with doctors as I grew older, I thought more and more about adoption being an option to start a family. As time passed, my anxiety about starting a family grew. I knew I wanted to be a mom. But what if it didn't happen to me? What if God said no in his answers for prayer? What if I couldn't biologically have kids? Would my family accept my kids even if they weren't biologically connected? These were all questions that ran through my mind in college, and while Ross and I were dating, early marriage, and some of them even still today. I believe there was a reason that God put me through that test of trusting God to see who my future husband will be. And it was to prepare me for this path in starting a family. Ross and I have struggled with infertility for 5 years. When people ask how long we've been in the adoption process, my first answer is 2 years. Back in January 2017, we started paperwork. Lots and lots of paperwork. This included trainings, home studies, letters written by character references, pastors, along with employment verifications, profile books, and just the waiting and matching process. You might think, oh, I skipped a line. But we've been talking about adoption for over 8 years. You might think, okay, the math doesn't add up. They've been going through infertility for 2 years, 5 years. They've been married for 6, but they've been talking about adoption for 8 years. I vividly remember sitting in my parents' driveway, sitting in Ross's truck, that big old Chevy pickup truck, when we were first dating, talking about our hopes and dreams. During a conversation about future families, I told Ross about my diagnosis. What would that mean and what that would mean for me down the line, and the fact that my future children most likely were going to be adopted. During that conversation, I gave him an out because of the fact that that was such a heavy bomb to drop on someone. You guys, we'd been dating for 8 weeks of saying, hey, you know what, this is where I'm at, and if this isn't what you want, that's okay with me, but let's evaluate. But I knew in the moment when Ross said, with his love and grace in his voice, I'm okay with adoption. If this is how we are going to make our family, then okay. God answered my prayer to finding the right person I was meant to be with for the rest of my life with Ross. Fast forward 3 years after an engagement, a wedding, living on our own for the first time, and when we had decided to start a family. We started trying for about a year, and after a year of no success, on our own, we decided to seek medical help. Come to find out, go figure, my medical diagnosis had come to the forefront again. Because of my issues with the PCOS, it was going to be very, very hard to get pregnant. I went through medications, mood swings, tears, being jealous of others that were having babies, and not to mention being really mad at every time there was a negative pregnancy test. Why was this happening? I do not understand. We did everything right. I was back to not understanding God's plan. I have been reminded by friends and family that everything was going to be great, all in God's time. For every time I heard it's all in God's plan, somebody needed to give me $1 because I would be a millionaire now. But one verse that sticks out to me every time I go through those anxious moments is Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. This is a verse that has been reminded to me since I was a freshman in high school. As a youth participant, we went to a big convention in DC, And a requirement to go was we had to memorize 10 memory verses. And I hated that. Because I just wanted to go on a trip. But I am so grateful for Timothy and Rhonda and Kay and Marty who sat with us to sit and memorize those verses because they knew the value down the line of being able to have those things to depend on. I may or may not have been one of the kids on the bus that was trying to get my memory verses done as we were driving to DC. So that verse has stuck with me through the pain, the grief, and the loss. But with that pain, grief, and loss, it has set me on to a path for a new family. Let me tell you a little story about this bassinet. This bassinet was given to Ross and I by very, very close friends. Not looking at you either. Because I will make it through this without breaking down. So this bassinet was passed on to us from friends that had gone through infertility, and they had friends that had gone through infertility. This bed has carried 5 miracle babies? 3? 3. So 3 miracle babies, and to Ross and I, it represents a symbol of Ruth and Naomi style love, where they love you through thick and thin, good and bad, up and down, in and out. I hope in the future that more miracle babies will be able to have many restful nights in that bed. On top of the amazing relationship with Kristen and Jeff, I've had the opportunity to connect with others in my community about infertility. Because I was able to process through my grief for those that have gone before me, I have been able to help others process in that grief as well. We have friends in Grant that had been going through infertility, and I was one of 3 people that knew: her husband, her sister, and me. The fact that God was able to use me as a vessel to connect with other people is powerful. And that is part of my struggle of not being able to control things, but then giving the grace that knowing that God uses me to help others keeps me going. There's another family that Ross and I have been able to get very close with during our journey of adoption. And I believe that is because of God's timing. We were able to make those friends when we did. You see, Ross and I have been doing the paperwork stage for 2 years. For almost a year, we dragged our feet on getting the paperwork done because it just didn't feel like the right time. When we had finally gotten our paperwork done, we then moved on to the training phase of things. When we were at a training in Kalamazoo, we introduced ourselves to another family that was going through the process. And I said, "Hi, my name is Erin. What is your name?" Because of that introduction, we now have lifelong friends. We were invited to come to their son's dedication in Kalamazoo, and when we weren't able to make it, they invited us to go to his finalization for the adoption in Muskegon. And for those of you that might not know, that's a big deal. Typically, it's just immediate family, and we were one of many that were able to help celebrate that life. If we had rushed through that paperwork and not waited on God's timing, we wouldn't have met Kay and Ray. On the adoption note, here's an update of where Ross and I are. We have an approved home study and are currently waiting for a match. This means that it could happen tomorrow, it could happen in 3 months, it could happen in 3 years. We are just waiting on God's timing. We ask for prayers for God's timing and the grace to be able to wait. We've received so many questions about our adoption process, and here it is summed up. We're working through Bethany Christian Services through their domestic infant program. This means that we are approved to take a placement of a child that is newborn through 6 months. When it comes to gender, race, and ethnicity, We're open to any and all. We are open to whoever God places in our lives. A question that we get quite often is about openness. We are prepared for an open, semi-open, or closed adoption. For those of you that don't know what those terms mean, that's okay. A closed adoption is where you have limited knowledge to who the birth parents are. Sometimes it's just ages, sometimes you might get a first name. A semi-open adoption is where you have knowledge of first names, then communication is run through the adoption agency with letters and pictures. And see, I'm so much better with conversation, so this whole like stand up and not engage is not my thing.
You're doing great.
With an open adoption, this is an opportunity to have a relationship between biological family. This does not replace the relationship our family has with our child. We are the parents and we will be making parenting decisions. And please know that we have considered our options very carefully, and we truly believe that this is what God has planned for us, for our friends, and what's best for all parties involved, including our future children. If you know me well, you're probably thinking, in her story, she's leaving people out in her Ruth and Naomi relationships. Not so fast. I have not, because these people mean the world to me, and they've helped me in my journey overall. To my parents, my sister, and my best friend of 20 years. Okay. I believe that every time you help me process through trusting God in anxiety attacks, panic attacks, spiraling down the drain, you are there to show me God's love, and my thankfulness to you is beyond measure. I'm so thankful to the family that I have by our first definition. Do you have that slide, Dean, by chance?
Oh, it's on the children's blessing.
All right, well, by the first definition, with a bond of close individuals such as a parent and children, or a household or social unit of people sharing a common goal, a group, or a kindred. I'm thankful to both of you. You have no idea the impact you have made on the lives around you. I wouldn't be me if I didn't at least sing a couple of notes for you. This is from one of my favorite musicals, and it reminds me that we all have an impact on others, so let's try to remember and help to have a positive one. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, so let me say before we part. Yep. Thank you so much. So I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. In the end, I truly believe that it's God's big plan, that we can't see all of the ins and the outs, the ups and the downs, but He calls us to trust Him and support one another. So please remember from Ruth 1:16, Ruth answered, "Please don't tell me to leave you and return home. I will go where you go. I will live where you live. Your people are my people, and your God will be my God." When it comes to loving and caring for your family, go where they go. Love who they love, and let their God be your God. Amen.